So, how y'all doing? This is MongoSlade, and we'll be talking today about Dave Meltzer's disingenuous tweet in which he said that he enjoys watching PWG takeovers on the network because it's totally the same thing as when AEW hires a bunch of the former WWE talent. We'll talk about that next. So, what exactly did Dave Meltzer mean with this tweet? Well, obviously, he means that WWE has taken wrestlers from other promotions, namely PWG. Some people have noticed that WWE staff sometimes are from TNA. You know, a lot of the wrestlers are from also wrestled in Ring of Honor. But this is a false equivalence. Why is it a false equivalence? Well, because WWE is not utilizing the reputation of these other promotions or reputations gained. Sometimes they don't even use the same name as they did when they were in other promotions. Now, some people, of course, like Adam Cole, got to use his name. Well, the Undisputed Era in general got to use their names. But as far as their backstories, as far as where they had worked previously, not relevant. It's almost never used. In fact, WWE very, very, very rarely even acknowledges people working in other promotions. That's actually one of the things that people talk about when it comes to WWE. Oh, they just like to eliminate the past. They act like people didn't exist anywhere before they got there. Well, they typically do that because they don't want people attempting to cash in on things that they've done before. They want to be able to create their own stars and create their own entities and intellectual property and that whole ordeal. And in order to do that, sometimes you have to wipe the slate clean. Now, there are times where they let somebody keep their name. AJ Styles, they let him keep his name. CM Punk got to keep his name. But most of the time, they make people change their names. Remember, they changed Chris Hero's name. Kevin Owens changed his name. Sami Zayn changed his name. None of them got to use any of the gimmicks that they had used in Ring of Honor or anywhere else because WWE was, in a sense, erasing what they had done previously. That's kind of the point, And then when you do have situations where the guy uses his own name, he's essentially licensing the WWE the ability to use his name, they still don't talk extensively about everything that the guy has done. And we want to be honest. That's just point one. Point two is that with the exception of maybe TNA, most of these other promotions are not really even televised. PWG, for instance, is not televised. So it's not like somebody knew that this guy was in PWG. You ask the average WWF fan or WWE fan, whichever one you choose. Some people still call it the WWF. But if you ask them, they have no idea what PWG is and where it is and who is in it and why. They don't care and they don't know. It's not televised. It's not relevant. It has no mainstream appeal whatsoever. The average WWE audience member does not know who the fuck wrestled in PWG or Ring of Honor. They wouldn't know, and it doesn't matter. It won't help the characters anyway. Like, it doesn't help anybody in WWE anyway. What good does it do for somebody to be on TV talking about, oh yeah, I was a 10-time blah 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 and blah 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 blah. It's like, okay, what does that mean? It's not like the NFL though. Like when you're in the NFL, they talk about, oh, this is what you did in the NCAA. This was, you were a national champion or something like that. That correlates directly to being into the NFL. That doesn't correlate in wrestling. Like nobody cares if you're a 6-time PWG champion. Who the fuck knows what that is? Who the fuck knows what that means? It doesn't matter. WWE always treats these new talent as people who are stepping up. Like we still say, guys move up to the main roster. Like you're moving up, you're going upwards. It's always been seen that way to a degree. Even back in the 80s in the territory days, it's always been seen as being a big deal to get over in New York, and that's just kind of how it is. WWE, they treat everything like the minor leagues, and some places are minor leagues. They're not relevant. They talk somewhat okay about Japan. So when they brought in Shinsuke Nakamura, they brought in Asuka, they brought in AJ Styles. They talk about Kenta Kobashi, not Kenta Kobashi, Kenta. When they bring those guys in, they talked about Japan, but they didn't talk specifically about everything that they've done. You know, they mentioned it here and there, but they didn't like pour over it. This wasn't like guys cutting promos about what they did in the Tokyo Dome. It's like it wasn't. It's not relevant. You know, you're doing something different and you're on a bigger stage. You have to be big. You have to be big league now. So it's not nearly the same thing. When you look at the way people treat leaving WWE and going somewhere else, it's seen at best as a lateral move or a step down, you know, which is why, you know, people get so angry when the first promo that they cut is about WWE, because it's like you haven't gotten over it. You know, it's like the breakup that you can't get over. You can't stop talking about it. You know, like it's again and again and again with the same shit. But it's optics. You know, WWE does different things as far as the optics concerned, and the audience does not recognize all of your championships that you want anywhere else because they don't care. Even if you told them, you can run down the laundry list of PWG champion, Ring of Honor champion, AAA Mega champion, blah 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 champion, blah 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 champion. If they still look at you and you suck, they don't care. Okay, so ultimately it's not the same thing. It's a false equivalence to think that it's the same thing. It's not. The second thing, well, second or third thing, I forget which one because I'm recording this in stages, but it is that we talking about reputations here. It's almost like Dave Meltzer lives in a bubble where everybody knows these things, these factoids that he throws out. Nobody knows what PWG is. I'm sorry. Nobody knows. Nobody outside the wrestling bubble knows what that shit is. Nobody knows what it means. So, you know, and it's not like it matters anyway. Because when you go somewhere different, you are sort of back in the competition, doing something a little bit different. Like if somebody said, well, heaven forbid somebody gets traded in sports, you know? And it's like, well, yeah, you can get traded in sports, but you're not guaranteed a spot or guaranteed the same spot unless you're a superstar or whatever. But, you know, if you trade Michael Jordan from one team to the other, he's still going to be Michael Jordan. You know, he's still going to get the same position. He's going to get a starting job. But there's other players where if you trade him, he's got to still earn his spot. You know, he got to earn his spot on the new team. He has to compete with the new people around him. When we're talking about, as far as AEW, TNA, etc., is that the WWE guys usually get prime spots when they come in. They get prime spots. WWE makes motherfuckers start from the bottom, right? They usually doing jobs in NXT, like Strickland, Shane Strickland. I think that's his name on the Indies. Is Isaiah Swerve Scott. He was doing jobs in NXT for the longest. Adam Cole was also doing jobs in NXT for the longest. Kushida was doing fucking jobs in NXT for the longest. That's kind of the way that you do things in WWE. Is that they always going to kind of treat you like trash, and you know, or you may get a big debut, but then over time they start putting the spurs to you like they did with Chris Jericho. He had the big debut, and then it was kind of like, okay, slow it down, ingratiate yourself to this audience. Okay, we got the big pop of you jumping over. We got that. You know, maybe you get the big match out of it, maybe you don't. But then we slow it down, and now you have to establish yourself in our brand. You don't get a special spot in our brand at the top without earning it. In other places where you get, you know, in the TNA or whatever, you would get a top spot, a main event, and not have had a single match in the promotion. Kurt Angle did that. He had a big main event match in TNA, didn't have a single match in the promotion. That just goes to show that for a lot of people, it's small potatoes. You know, like if Miro which he did, came into AEW and the ratings went up and he got the most viewed video on their YouTube channel, then he comes in, he looks like a big star compared to everybody else that was already there. You know, so it's like, who are you helping? You're just helping yourself. You know, you're using him to boost your own reputation, which is fine and all, but it's not earned. It's not an earned reputation. What it is It's something that's taken from WWE's investment in this guy, investing in this man's face and training him. Because Miro has no history outside of WWE, if I don't remember correctly. I don't know if he worked anywhere else. Same thing with Jake Hager. I don't think he worked anywhere else. Now, certain guys, Jericho, obviously, Moxley, obviously, they worked other places. But some of these guys that leave WWE and go into TNA or Ring of Honor or somewhere like that, they get a top prime spot with no history of working anywhere else. So, and that's what people are talking about. People are like, oh, you get to bring a WWE guy in, he gets to go straight to the top of the card, or he gets a big shot, shot higher than most other people. And it's actually at the detriment of your homegrown stars, of which you need to build in order for your brand to have a unique identity, and that was the thing that TNA did. TNA did have established stars for the WWE guys to take to the next level. Like Samoa Joe. When Kurt Angle came in, even though he came in, he went directly into the main event of one of their pay-per-views. But he went against a homegrown star that TNA had been building up over time. Yes, Samoa Joe came from Ring of Honor, but Ring of Honor, like I said, it's not anything that people watched on TV and they knew it by heart. That audience probably knew it. The TNA audience probably knew Ring of Honor, but the national TV audience didn't have no fucking idea what Ring of Honor is because it wasn't really even on TV. Like people still can't watch it. And this was over 10 years ago. Like how do you even find Ring of Honor on television these days? It's incredibly difficult. So what they did was they put a young guy in the ring with Kurt Angle, international superstar Kurt Angle, versus, hey, if you've been watching our show, this guy has been a badass the whole time. Now you want to see these two collide. You can play it off like a dream match. And people will be like, oh, Kurt Angle's here. And I heard this guy's a killer. He's undefeated. Let's see what happens. That's how you do it in your mind. AEW doesn't do that. They kind of did it with MJF, but Moxley had already been there all this time, so it wasn't like they were doing anything new. And then when Hangman Page, when he did it with Hangman Page and Chris Jericho, it was like a tournament thing, and it wasn't a way to highlight Hangman Page's personality or anything. But my major point is that the WWE guys, when they go to TNA, when they go to AEW, they don't have to earn a spot. They're guaranteed a spot because they have the WWE sort of notoriety. They have that reputation. While there is no other reputation in the WWE that allows you to go straight to the top of the card. The only thing that gets you to the top of the card in WWE is if you have a history of making a lot of goddamn money. Then you can get to the top. That's what Vince McMahon did with Hulk Hogan. When Hulk Hogan had this history of drawing like big money in Minneapolis, and he was a bigger draw than Bob Backlund. So Vince was like, oh well, shit, I can get rid of Bob Backlund. Shit, I just replace him with Hulk Hogan, and so that's what he did. But when Vince brought in guys from other territories, they didn't automatically go straight to the top. Even if the guy was a top guy somewhere else and had drawn a ton of money, like the Junkyard Dog, like Harley Race, like Dusty Rhodes. Like, you see what people complain, WWE doesn't even use these guys properly. It's like he's forcing them to start over, essentially. And to some people, that is a bad thing because they do have this history and this reputation that they can build off of, But at the same time, you have to also find your way in the pecking order because almost everybody is a top star from somewhere else. Well, that's how it was in the 80s anyway. Almost everybody came from somewhere else as a top star, and where you was a top star might have been a smaller market than when they was a top star. And then you might not even, and it really doesn't matter because now you are national and people are going to be over in different areas, all that type of stuff. But it was different. In WCW, it was also different. WWE took younger mid-card acts out of WCW that really hadn't gotten a run. Like when you say, oh, well, they took Hall and Nash and Mean Mark Callis, or they took, let's put it in its proper terms. You took Mean Mark and Oz and the Diamond Stud and made them stars. It's like, no, they didn't. The Diamond Stud got fired. Oz quit. Mean Mark got fired. And then they went to the WWE and became something completely different. That is not the case when people leave WWE and go to other promotions. Sometimes they try to do something completely different, but often they try to be as much of what they were in WWE as possible because that's how people know them. Even when they brought in Miro, right? When they brought in Miro, what did they do? They even used the same color scheme for his Titantron that they used to do for Rusev Day. Same color scheme. I know it's probably his country's colors, but it goes to show that they're not trying to stray away too far from what he did in WWE. And look, like I said, in the 80s, it was a completely different ball game. The Junkyard Dog was a Junkyard Dog in Shreveport, in New Orleans, and in New York. But, you know, they hit a point where Vince basically just decided that guys are going to starting over. They're going to do something new. And I think that was in the 90s where, you know, he was bringing in guys from WCW or guys from ECW, and they had to be able to do something different. They had to be able to grow. You know, you couldn't just be Too Cold Scorpio in the WWE. You had to do something else, you know, and sometimes that did not work. Well, like Flash Funk didn't work, you know, but sometimes it does work, you know, it's a gamble. But there is no, that's what Dave Meltzer is talking about. It's a false equivalence. There is no equivalent to the WWE. Nobody knows what the fuck PWG is. It's not like these guys got hired because of everything they did in PWG. It's, hey, we recruit talent. This guy's kind of good. He might got something. We're going to bring him in. We're not bringing him in because he did blah, blah, blah in PWG, because it didn't work for John Cena. He wasn't a top star wherever the hell they picked him up from. You know, like you heard the stories that they had the option of taking Samoa Joe at the same time they took John Cena. They just took John Cena. They didn't take Samoa Joe. So if it was all about that particular place and where that place, where, you know, where they built their name, why didn't they just take both of them? Make stars out of both of them. It's because they saw more potential in one than they did in the other. And then people still to this day, WWE made the bad decision. They should have just took the better wrestler. It's like, no, they took the guy that was the most marketable. That's what they did. You know, and they made him start from scratch and learn how to do what they wanted him to do. So that's what we're asking AEW to do here. We're asking AEW to, one, when you bring in a WWE talent, please don't give them a top spot right out of the gate. I know that it's difficult because they have a name and everything, but please don't do that. Force them to compete with all the other people on the roster. That way they feel like they've earned their spot and not just being gifted a spot just because they were in WWE. Two, stop with the false fucking equivalence, because AEW is not equivalent to WWE. It does look like a step down for a lot of people. You know, if you're throwing a fucking parade because 1 million people watched AEW Dynamite one time in a full fucking calendar year, then guess what? You're not the same. You can't say that it's the same thing. Okay? You can't say it's the same thing. If you're moving from a non-televised product to a televised product, that's not a lateral move. That's a step up. You know, some people step up from the dark to the light. Some people go from the light to the dark. You know, some people go from Hollywood to Broadway. Some people go from Broadway to Hollywood. And there shouldn't really be anything wrong with either one of them. If you want to be honest, success is success. It's all relative anyway, to a degree. But stop with the disingenuous bullshit. Stop with the fake false equivalence. Just stop. You live in a wrestling bubble. And everybody who talks like this, you live in a wrestling bubble. And it's not, oh, you're a WWE fan, so blah, blah, blah. That's not the point. The point is, what I'm saying is true. Even when WCW was winning in the ratings, it was still considered a bigger deal to be a star in New York. You know, it's just common fucking sense. And there's nothing you can do about that. You can be a big star in AEW. But the fact is, you get labeled a WWE guy when you have made your name and reputation in WWE. Nobody calls fucking Frankie Kazarian a WWE guy. Frankie Kazarian was in WWE. He's not a WWE guy. Am I right or am I wrong? Some people out there remember when Frankie Kazarian was in WWE. I remember it. I think he quit because they wanted him to cut his hair and he didn't want to do it. It was something to that effect. It was something stupid. But he was like a velocity level guy. Nobody calls Frankie Kazarian a WWE guy. Nobody remembers that shit. He didn't cut his teeth there. He worked there a couple of times. MJF had been there before. You know, occasionally there were guys who made an appearance in WWE. You know, maybe even worked a few matches, did a loop or two. You know, but if that's not where you're primarily known, we won't say, "Oh, you're just a WWE guy." No, if Paul London, you know, came to AEW, I wouldn't call him a WWE guy, even though he was very successful in WWE. I wouldn't call him because he hadn't been there in forever. He'd been gone for like 10 years. So it wouldn't be the same thing. But smart people who think would understand that. And then there's people like Meltzer and his ilk who are apparently just upset about it. It's like, why are you so tight-assed about this thing? Get over it. Anyway, I'm talking long enough. Thank you guys for listening. Like this video, share the video, subscribe to my channel. Make sure you get notifications and things like that. And I'll talk to you guys later.